And if I'm crazy or if I'm capping, tell them boys cut me today. And I'll sign with the Commanders tomorrow. And we'll see who capping.
We'll see who's capping. I had to look that one up. It means exaggerating or lying. That was the latest from Brandon Aiyuk, and I'm officially done on him. Look, I think he's a great player. I was such a big fan of him at the end of 2023, and throughout the last few months, I'm okay with whatever they decide. They're the ones that have all the information. They're the ones that are going to sit down with him and examine him, and I would imagine psychologically even before they examine him physically. But this is just cowardly, what he's doing. This isn't the way to handle it. And clearly he is either getting terrible advice or not listening to good advice. I mean, he's outwardly now putting Washington in a spot in which I would think the league might be interested in whether or not they've had, a conversation or they've indicated to him that they're going to sign him when he is released. That is what we call in the trade tampering. Now, I'm not suggesting Washington's tampering. I'm just suggesting every single time he infers, implies, or directly states that if he's released, Washington's going to sign him, that certainly it perks up the ears of people in the league's front office in New York. The guy's an idiot. I mean, he's legitimately an idiot in terms of his social media output. Behind the scenes, I have no idea. Maybe he's brilliant. He might be. Kittle said, essentially, be careful what you wish for, even though the kid can play, and he can play. He can absolutely play. But he has no interest in telling us and showing us that that's the only thing that matters. It's all about his current employer and the broken bond, however that happened, between the two parties. He's a child. And that will manifest itself, maybe not in year one, but eventually down the road. There goes, for the grace of God, me, as in his next team. I'm not interested anymore. I am totally behind whatever the team does because they've got the most information. I am clearly just going on what we see on social media. It's become exhausting for starters. Exhausting. And it's clearly immature. And then there's also indication that he may be a bit off. So none of that, by the way, as I've been saying for the last couple of months, is a disqualifier. There's lots of immature, and there's lots of crazy, and there are lots of bad people in the NFL that have talent and perform. And he could be one of those. By the way, nothing indicates that he's a bad person at this point. The indications, based on a limited sample size, I acknowledge that in terms of his social media output. But you also go back to the fact that a team was actually, in this day and age, allowed to void millions and millions of dollars of his guaranteed money. He is not super bright from afar. He's clearly immature. And again, he might be missing a screw or four at this point. And what he's doing right now will once again, at some point in his next stop, rear its ugly head. He's not interested in doing what he can do to affect his future right now. He should have shown up for OTAs. He should have said, I'm here. I'm in shape. Let's put the past behind us. I'm ready to play football. I miss it. Force their hand. Don't put them into a position where potentially they could void more of his deal. Or at this point, there's nothing left to void, but they could certainly go after what they've paid him. I'm exhausted and I'm done. And I tweeted that out last night, and some of you are just really, really funny. I love Road Chaser. You're one of my all-time favorites in terms of, I think you're bright and you absolutely sync up on a lot of things with me. But essentially, Road Chaser on X said, so you're reacting to, you're out because of a social media posts that you've been influenced by, LOL. Look, social media is the delivery system for him because he is cowardly and he's immature. It's precisely why he's using social media the way he's using it that I am now at the point where I'm exhausted and I'm done. There are too many obvious signs that even though he's a great football player, or was the last time we saw him, and even though there's a really good chance that for a year or so he could be perfectly behaved, eventually this is going to come to the next team that he plays for. By the way, Richard Sherman had some things to say about Aiyuk and the root cause of all of this. And that's, I saw that even before this video last night, and that was very much in my head. I'm going to play that for you coming up here shortly. Good morning, everybody. Man, there was just a massive trade in the NBA. LaMelo Ball to Minnesota for Naz Reid. When is Jaylen Brown going to be traded? If I were a Boston fan, I'd never trade or want the Celtics to trade Jaylen Brown. Hey, Jaylen, we're sorry that you've been on the trade block. You're under contract. We can also give you another $140 million for another 2 years. We want you to stay. We want you to be a grown-up. We want you to be the same player you've been. And we don't care if you get along with Jason Tatum or not. A lot of great tandems haven't gotten along. You've already won one title together. Why not another one? Jaylen Brown's too good to trade. You'll never get anything back in a trade as good as him. Crazy. The NBA is nuts this time of year. The draft continued last night. The Wizards added another player, a player that I like, and I will talk about him on the show today. And the Nats last night lost another brutal heartbreaker to the Phillies. The night before was giving up 8 in the ninth with an 8-6 lead and losing 14-9. Last night, and they were down to their last out, last strike on Tuesday night. Last night, down to their last strike once again, and home run for Derek Hill. 2 out, 2 strike count on Derek Hill, and he goes deep off of our lefty, Richard Lovelady, who had quite the grimace when the pitch left his hand, as in, this is the one that's going to end the game. It just did, not in the way he wanted. And the Nats generated nothing in the bottom of the ninth, and they just lost 2 in a row that were very, very winnable. And they sit at the halfway mark, at 41-40. Still an unbelievable first half, considering the expectations for the Nationals. They probably have 3 All-Stars at this point. You certainly would say that James Wood is an absolute lock to be an All-Star. At this point, C.J. Abrams is pretty much a lock, and Foster Griffin is definitely now an opportunity to make the All-Star game, All-Star team as well. 8-2 with some incredible starts for the 30-year-old rookie. And certainly the surprise of that pitching staff so far. But 41-40 at the halfway mark. And currently, as far as the wild card race, they have, with these last 2 losses and a couple of wins by the teams in front of them, they've dropped now to 2.5 games out of the third spot, the third wild card spot. But it's really, you're talking about like 9 teams that are super bunched up for 3 spots in the National League wild card race. Long way to go, understood. But the Nats, 2 brutal losses in a row, including last night, where the bullpen just could not get it done with a lead going into the 9th inning. Another one with the Phillies tonight to finish up this 4-game set with them. The Caps, they were busy again yesterday. Max will get to that on the show today. There was one thing, and hit the what do you got, if you don't mind.
Sorry, say that again. We were discussing the LaMelo
what do you
Ball.
got?
Okay.
Hit what do you got? You got it? There you go. I didn't see this over the weekend, and I saw it last night, and I wanted to mention it because I've been a massive fan of this player for a long time. The Tennessee Titans agreed to a long-term contract extension with Jeffrey Simmons for well over $100 million. This guy has been flying under the radar, and I think a lot of Tennessee players in general have been flying under the radar in recent years because they haven't been a good team offensively. They've been better defensively. But we know that Chigakonkwo, probably has more ability in terms of production than what he was able to generate in Tennessee. We'll see that this year. I feel confident that we're going to see that this year. And then Jeffrey Simmons flat out has been one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league since he came into the league. And he signed a 3-year, $105.8 million contract extension that includes $100 million in guaranteed money, and it makes him the highest paid defensive tackle in league history. League history. The average annual for him at the D tackle spot. This is not edge. This isn't pass rusher. This isn't defensive end. It now sits with the contract extension at $35.3 million per year. Chris Jones's $31.8 million was the highest. I always find it interesting to watch the league and find some of these other players that nobody's really spending a lot of time talking about because they're on bad teams. Jeffrey Simmons has been an absolute monster defensive tackle since he came into the league from Mississippi State 7-8 years ago, something like that. Washington's got to find something like that on the inside. They've been trying. I mean, the Daron Payne, John Allen years, we thought something would emerge. And look, they both had good seasons, but not consistent good seasons. Daron probably, I would say, had the best of the seasons in 2022 among the two, but John was probably the more, he was the more consistent player. I think Kinlaw has some potential. I think Tim Settle has some potential. I'm excited to see what Daron provides during this contract year. But man, the defensive tackles in the league sometimes are the ones that don't get as much attention because the pass rushers generate the most sacks in the league. But sometimes they're among the best football players in the league. Aaron Donald is certainly, an example of that. Chris Jones has been an example of that. Dexter Lawrence commanded a first-round pick. I don't think Washington had a chance to give away Daron Payne in the offseason. Jalen Carter is an interesting defensive tackle because in terms of true raw strength and ability, he might be number one, but he's a bit of an inconsistent wild card as well. I've read things here in the offseason that the Eagles may look to move Jalen Carter, which is crazy. Quinnen Williams has been outstanding, and he's in Dallas now. Leonard Williams has had some really, really good years. Vita Vea's had some really good years. Cam Hayward's had good years. Derek Brown in Carolina is very, very underrated. But Jeffrey Simmons got paid, man, and that dude's been doing it for a while now, and he deserves it. I have thought for at least 3 or 4 years that he's been one of the 3 or 4 best defensive linemen, let alone interior defensive linemen in the league. And Tennessee recognized it. And here's the thing, like you look at, his numbers and it's like he did have 11 sacks last year, which was a career high. He's had years in which he's had 8.5 and 7.5, but that's not the impact of that position. Sure, you'd like to see the sack numbers high, no doubt, but there's so much more to that position. And he's one of the best, one of the absolute best, and has been since he was picked. I'm thinking 7 or 8 years ago now. I want to say it was the 2019 draft, but I'm not exactly sure. Maybe in the 2018. The 2018 draft is my guess on him out of Mississippi State. Man, Mississippi State's had some good defensive players in the league in recent years. We tried our hand at one of them, Montez Sweat, and he's playing pretty well in Chicago. I saw that last night. I guess I just missed it over the weekend. Biggest deal for a D tackle in NFL history. Do you remember when Albert Hainsworth's deal was not only the biggest for a defensive lineman in history, it was the biggest for a defensive player in history? How'd that one work out? This one will work out much better. All right, when we come back, I do want to weigh in on the Wizards selection in the second round. They actually traded for this player with picks in the second round. We'll get to that. And then I want you to hear what Richard Sherman said about Brandon Aiyuk and the root cause of all of this. To me, it makes the situation for him even worse. And then we will, entertain your calls on the latest video drop from Brandon Aiyuk. I'm now officially out. I'm not going to continue to push that this is going to be, potentially a good thing. It still could be, and if it is, I'm going to root for it. And I'm leaving it up to them. Obviously, we all have to. I've always felt that way from the beginning. It's like we can have our opinions, even the one that I've switched on today, but they're the ones that are going to be able to dig into the actual information and get, I would imagine, like a legitimate psychological, makeup on this guy to find out whether or not it even makes sense to bring him into their building. And then there's the dynamic with Jaden, and because when you hear what Richard Sherman said about him, that brings up the whole relationship with Jaden and how much he's going to be counting on his guy to deliver for him. And meantime, Stephon Diggs, all he does is post videos of himself working, getting himself into shape out at the University of Maryland, ready to play football again. Yeah, I'm for Diggs on a 1 year. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
With the 46th pick in the 2026 NBA Draft, the Orlando Magic select Felix Opara from Lagos, Nigeria, and the University of Tennessee.
I love this pick. They traded 60 and 51 to Orlando to take Opara at number 46 overall. The NBA's broadcast is getting a little bit better about announcing the trades and explaining the trades, but you're still seeing, the team assigned to the pick as the wrong team in Chiron form. Doesn't make any sense to me to do it that way, but there must be a reason. So this dude, Opara, is, when you talk about long-armed, tall, and he's got I think it's a 9'4", a 9'4" standing reach. So literally underneath the basket, he's almost, with the length of his arms grabbing the rim. He had a game against Iowa State in the Sweet 16, and I remember this game because Tennessee was a selection that night getting the points, and he was just dominant defensively. I think he had 4 block shots, but influenced another 5 or 6, had 10 rebounds. And then offensively, really what he is he's a project offensively. This guy was, a Nigerian who played mostly soccer, until starting basketball. But he is really a defensive, I think, contributor almost immediately because of his reach, because of his wingspan, because of his timing. He's got very good timing defensively. I think he can guard multiple positions because he's very athletic and he really can move his feet defensively. Offensively, it's about getting to the rim and getting offensive rebounds and dunking the offensive rebounds. That's essentially what he is right now offensively. But I like the pick. How much room they have on the roster for somebody like him, I don't know, but they needed another front court player. They needed, a defensive center to come in for Sarr, to even potentially play with Sarr, if AD is out. And I think this guy is potentially a really good defensive contributor. And probably not a starter, but go watch the highlights of the Iowa State game and just look at some of the balls that he threw back against them. And that was a really good basketball team, and they smoked Iowa State in that game. Iowa State, I think, was missing a key player in that game. But he was, let me pull up the stats exactly for that Sweet 16 game, because then they got run, if you recall, by Michigan in the Elite Eight. I also gave out Tennessee against Michigan. That one did not work. 3 block shots, 10 rebounds, 12 points. On 5 of 6 shooting in the game against Iowa State. I would bet that of the 5 made field goals, 4 of them were just put back dunks. And he shot. He doesn't shoot a lot. He's a lob catcher and dunker, and he's an offensive rebound catcher and put back guy. Shot 65% from the floor in the 4 tournament games that he had. And during that run of 4 games, had 8 block shots, so averaged 2 block shots a game in the NCAA tournament. During the course of the regular season, he had some really good games. I'm just looking to see if he had like a ridiculous shot block game. He had a bunch of games where he had 4 and a bunch of games where he had 3 in the game. But he is, I don't know, nice project, but offensively, but a guy that I think can really help defensively. Looking forward to seeing what Will Dawkins and company say about that pick. Hoping to get one of either Winger or Dawkins on the show either tomorrow or for Monday. All right, let's get back to Brandon Aiyuk. I wanted to play just how long is this first cut from Richard Sherman?
I got to cut down to about 2 minutes and 40 seconds here.
Okay. Richard Sherman was asked about Aiyuk, and I watched the whole thing, which was several minutes.
10 minutes long.
Yeah, and it's not very flattering. But Richard Sherman seems to think he knows where all of this started between the 49ers and Aiyuk. And that's what we're going to play here. The first part of this where he says, I think I can explain why they hate each other or why he distrusts and started to go down the path of not liking his employer. Here was Richard Sherman.
Richard, what do you make of this whole Brandon Aiyuk situation?
It's unfortunate, but it didn't start there. It started at the Super Bowl. It probably started even before the Super Bowl. Receivers are very incredible, interesting, but sometimes, it's a fragility there in terms of, how you deal with the psychology of the receivers on your team and how to make everybody happy. And on a team like the San Francisco 49ers with an all-pro tight end, an offensive player of the year in the backfield, you had Deebo Samuel. It's hard, and Brandon Aiyuk. Only one football. It's hard to get the football to everybody at the same time. But Brandon Aiyuk was the highest targeted guy. He had 1,300 yards. He would tell you he probably could have dealt with 50 more targets and really been a top 5 receiver in the National Football League. That's what he believes. And I think that's what the San Francisco 49ers believed at the time. And what I believe happened was Brandon Aiyuk played well in the Super Bowl and created separation and felt like he was open a lot more than he got the ball. He felt like he individually could have impacted that game in a greater way and helped them win a Super Bowl, especially, even the play where Brock gets sacked at the end by Chris Jones because of a blown assignment on the offensive line. He was wide open, ran a great route. It would have been there. It would have been there whether you hit him or Juwan Jennings. Either way, they would have won that game. And I think as a player sometimes that eats at you. You're talking about a guy who watched our quarterback throw a Super Bowl away and you're just sitting there like, that it eats at you, and it eats at you for a long time. And so once you get to that point, you have to make a decision that offseason. You know what I mean? Is the bitterness and resentment and frustration going to eat at you to the point where you need to go somewhere else, where you need to play somewhere else? Or are you going to be able to flush it, deal with the trauma of it and be able to play football and help get your team back to where they were before? And I think that was hard for Brandon Aiyuk. I think the frustration, the bitterness, the anger, the resentment, all those feelings kind of festered that offseason. And then comes the contract. Then comes the trade rumors and everything that came with that situation. When you agree to the contract and you sign and you say, hey, $130 million, like I'm a 49er. At that point, you got to buy back in. At that point, you have to buy back in. And I don't think Brandon Aiyuk ever bought back in.
So the Super Bowl, maybe a little bit before, because he wasn't being targeted enough. If you're wondering, about his targets, in 2023, he was targeted 15 more times than any other receiver for the 49ers for the season. In the actual Super Bowl itself, Aiyuk had 3 receptions on 6 targets for 49 yards. McCaffrey was targeted more than anybody. Actually, Deebo was targeted more than Aiyuk was, and so was McCaffrey. Aiyuk had a really good postseason that year in 2023. He ended up with 20 catches in 3 playoff games for 149 yards. Aiyuk was really exceptional in 2023. We've already talked about, how good he was and the average yards per catch. The separation was ridiculous. The catch that he had in the NFC Championship game against Detroit was pretty much the game winner. He was just an elite level wide receiver in 2023, and he was good in 22, but 23 was really the take notice because I'm moving up the list of wide receivers, and hopefully I'm going to get paid like one of those guys. An excellent player. Look, I don't have any issue with players wanting the ball more. It's a position we've all gotten used to as fans. That's a position where there's just a lot of diva and there's a lot of belief, and you want that belief. You want some of that ego that comes along with it. You want a guy that believes that he needs to be targeted more to win the Super Bowl. Understood. You can't let it throw you the way it did if Richard Sherman's right. You can't let one game or maybe a couple of games send you into a complete and utter anti-employer tizzy. Like, that's just there's thin skin, and then there's barely any skin. He literally, if that's the root cause of all this, not being targeted enough in the Super Bowl. They were in the Super Bowl, and by the way, I'm not saying that he's wrong. I mean, if you recall that game, Kansas City's defense was pretty good. Purdy in that game, was fine, but the Chiefs. I mean, Mahomes was outstanding in that Super Bowl, and Kyle really blew it by, the decision he made in overtime because of the new rules in overtime. It's one thing to be pissed off and even be on the bench during the game. We've seen that a million times. All right. It's not the best look. It's not the best teammate over there, in a Super Bowl game. And I don't remember any shots of him doing that. But if that really threw him into what ended up being almost a 2.5-year tailspin of hating his employer and having it manifest into very difficult contract negotiations where he was, way too public, and then into what it's become since, thin skin, way too thin-skinned, way too much of a baby. You combine that with the way he's behaved on social media, there is a real maturity issue that, again, it's not a disqualifier in the NFL. I mean, felonies aren't disqualifiers in the NFL, and he hasn't committed any of those. A misdemeanor, yes. We still don't know if he's been arrested or not. There was a report that he was going to be issued an arrest, or the arrest warrant was issued. We don't even know if he's been arrested. But this guy Richard Sherman's essentially saying this guy let this game and not being targeted enough result in what it's resulted in over the last 2.5 years. Look, the injury didn't help. And maybe some of the things the 49ers did during the injury didn't help. We had that guy Grant Cohn on. He said they tried to trade him weeks after the injury. That didn't sit well with him. It certainly sounds like that the relationship had started to fracture before the contract was given out. Grant Cohn had suggested that. He said there were real battles within the organization as to whether or not to actually pay him because there were concerns about him. But Kyle was the one that went to bat for him. Kyle was the one that didn't want to trade him. Kyle wanted to keep him. Yeah, you put all this together. This is a young person who's just wildly immature and a little bit off. And I'm not suggesting that the 49ers are completely without any culpability in all of this. I'm not. But they're the ones that aren't talking. He is. And we're learning a little bit about his overall makeup with every passing video. And with every video that comes from people, not only in his camp, but people like Richard Sherman who just are familiar with this situation. We had Dante Whitner on. Whitner was the first one who suggested, this is 2 months ago now, he came on the show. He does a 49ers podcast. He played for the 49ers. And he's the one that suggested this is unprecedented and one of the dumbest things he's ever seen a player do in terms of losing that kind of money through voided guarantees, and that he needed to get his act together. And then Houshmandzadeh, who was essentially a guy that was very close to him and his personal mentor and coach, he's turned on him publicly. Is there anybody publicly that's in the realm of his sphere that has actually supported him?
LaShawn McCoy. That's about it.
That means nothing to me.
Yeah.
He's missing a few marbles too. McCoy. Some of the things, I mean, he is tell me what LaShawn McCoy said. I'm sure he has blamed everything on the 49ers, and Aiyuk is this brilliant strategy. This is a brilliant strategy for Aiyuk
You
to get
pretty
back
much
in the league and get a big contract.
You pretty much got it boiled right down to a T. But let me
Yeah.
see if I can grab the audio here real quick. Here it is.
I ain't gonna lie, he's became my favorite wide receiver. Yeah, yup. I like it, man. Hey, it's time to fight back. Don't let these ownerships, man, just try to own you. Them days is over with.
That's more or less the genesis of the entire argument.
Own you for. Meantime, he's mocking ownership for giving him $50 million because they're so stupid. I mean, was LaShawn McCoy listening to any of these videos? I mean, he's literally mocking them for how easy they were to fleece for $50 million. Yeah. I'm out. I mean, if they decide to do it, I'm going to trust them because obviously they have a lot more information. Based on what we have witnessed here over the last 2 weeks, Richard Sherman adding it all up. I mean, there is like legitimately outside of LaShawn McCoy, no support for him. No support for him. Now, have some people said, look, the 49ers, I'm not taking them off the hook either. Yes, like our guy Grant Cohn. Grant Cohn likes Brandon Aiyuk, but even said the behavior's been erratic and not the right way to go. But he also blames the 49ers for trying to trade him after the injury, which I would say is pretty low. But it sounds like all of this started before, when he didn't get targeted enough. Hey, bitch and complain. Tell them how you feel, face to face. Don't ever avoid me with just 6 targets in a Super Bowl game when I've been your best wide receiver all year. Don't do that. But instead, he's literally cost himself $30 to $40 million in guaranteed money. And we'll find out if anybody actually is interested in signing him. As of yesterday, I was all in on they're going to sign him. And I felt that way as a strong lean for a while. The Schefter stuff yesterday, saying that, talking to people around the league, they don't understand what he's doing and he's not helping his cause. Along with the latest video, Richard Sherman, maybe it's just I'm getting exhausted with this dude, but he's not likable. Not that it matters if he can do it on Sundays, but there's a part of this that has me believing he has talked his way social media-wise out of the league. And then I think to myself, somebody with that level of talent, if they're healthy, is never going to be out of the league. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Brandon Aiyuk, where do you stand on Aiyuk today? Do you want him or not? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. More Brandon Aiyuk yesterday. I don't know. I don't think it makes a lot of sense anymore. I think the level of immaturity and just the possibility that he's just a bit too off. I'd rather they do something with Diggs right now. I'd rather they go do something with Diggs. And I know that Diggs, trust me, I'm a Diggs guy, and I've always loved Stephon Diggs going back to his days at Maryland. He's not what Brandon Aiyuk, he would not be in this upcoming season what Brandon Aiyuk would be in this upcoming season if Aiyuk plays like he did at the end of 2023. Ayuk's ceiling in this discussion, as far as I can tell, is much higher than Diggs' ceiling. He's younger. Diggs has become a little bit more of a possession receiver. I still think he's a deep threat. I still think you have to respect his speed. I do. But Ayuk's ability vertically is unquestioned if you get that player. His ceiling's higher. But now with everything that's going on, I'm getting to that level where it's like, all right, even if you get him for a song on a total prove-it one-year deal, and you can get out of it whenever he decides that he doesn't like you anymore, and goes, full-scale social media on you. I just wonder how much pressure this is going to put on Jaden. If a lot of this has to do with the Super Bowl and him not getting targeted enough, imagine he's on a one-year, $8 million deal with a lot of incentives, and the incentives deal with receptions and yardage and touchdowns, not to mention those incentives leading to a new deal. I want Jaden to throw the ball to where he is supposed to throw the ball. I don't question that he would kowtow to his friend from Arizona State, but it's how his friend from Arizona State would handle games in which he didn't get targeted enough and with a chance to reach the incentives. And I don't even know if incentives are what incentivizes him. I think he wants to be a star receiver, and he was on his way to being that. Watching that video yesterday, seeing another video where this guy has had opportunities to face his employer and work it out. I mean, he's got an agent that apparently isn't in the mix right now. There are just a lot of red flags all over this guy. And again, what I've been saying all along still applies, even though I've changed my mind on the way I would kind of hope that this works out. It's very possible that he's just completely misunderstood and that he is going to be an absolute delight when he gets into a spot that he's comfortable in. But he's already shown a lot of true colors. And you do not want to, you don't want to diss him, because it'll turn on you quickly. Now, big difference between the 49ers and Washington. The 49ers gave him a stupid deal that he thinks he fleeced them on. He kind of did, considering that it's zero production, essentially, for the $50 million that they paid him. 301-230-0980. Max, where are you? I didn't ask you.
Oh, man, at this point, it's getting harder and harder to be an Aiyuk guy, and especially after the video that Stephon Diggs put out yesterday. Do you see that?
Yeah, the workout video.
Yes, the workout
Maryland.
video at Maryland where he was
Malik
running.
Washington throwing him passes.
Exactly. Running routes, crisp as ever, by the way. So, yeah, I think I'm leaning. I'm all the way on the Diggs camp now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not asking Diggs or Aiyuk. I mean, because, I'd get the same thing, neither or both. I'm asking where people are today on Brandon Aiyuk, because the story is moving here. It hasn't, every passing video, you learn a little bit more about the guy. Every passing video from somebody about the situation that might be close to the situation is an add-on to this story. I just, for whatever reason, last night, I watched that video and I watched the Richard Sherman thing, and I'm like, yeah, if I were Adam Peters at this point, it would reach the level of off-putting where the talent wouldn't be able to surpass it. The tantalizing, what if, because you're bringing a guy into the building that literally will go scorched earth on you at the drop of a hat that isn't dropped properly. And I don't know if that's what you want in your building. And I think this is the problem with this strategy that he has employed. And I don't think it's a thought-out strategy. I think it's just emotion. I think it's petulant. I think he's a child, legitimately super immature, and super unprofessional, obviously, as an extension of the immaturity. I also just wonder what each one of these videos does to, make people wonder how much contact, if any, Washington's had with him. When he suggests, get rid of me and I'm going to sign with the Commanders, like there's this implied notion that he knows they'll sign him when he becomes available. You can't set up your future employer for any kind of, hey, what's been going on here? You're not allowed to tamper in this league. He's under contract. He's with another team. Of course, he doesn't think about things like that. All right. Mo in Hyattsville. Aiyuk, in or out? Mo, you there? Put Mo on hold. Let's go to Bobby. Bobby, in or out?
Hey, Kevin. Good morning. I'm still
What's up,
all
Bobby?
in, man. He's just being a little bit probably immature, but I just don't think it's a deal. He's on Instagram. I don't give a crap. If he passes his medicals here in a few weeks, and Kevin, I really believe he just wants to go ahead and get released. That's why he's being stupid like this on this IG
No.
stuff.
He could have gotten to that point already, Bobby.
I know
if
that.
he had
but
any
he probably,
balls, he would have shown up at OTAs. There's a lot about his character that's being revealed here over the last few weeks. He went AWOL. He's afraid to face them. Like, go
Kevin.
Apply for reinstatement. Go tell them you want out. Be a professional. It happens all the time.
I understand, but I'm gonna trust AP too. And
well,
I
am
believe
too.
If it was a,
I am
if
too.
it was a distraction for Adam or Dan or ownership, they would have probably whispered something into Jaden's ear and say, "Look, tell your boy to cool his jets a little bit because he's getting out of hand." And Kevin, don't you think also
maybe they have?
If this worked, well,
you don't think people have?
You
don't think people have reached out to him to say, "Dude, this isn't the way." That's another thing. He's clearly not coachable when it comes to how he's handling this.
You got to be careful with tampering, okay? They don't want to get involved with this, okay? Because tampering's probably a different animal they got that fight. They're probably just laying low, let him do his thing. But don't you think if he passes his medicals and before we re-sign it, they bring him in and say, "Look, because it's going to be a prove-it deal, so the money's out. That's not even worth talking about. It's a prove-it deal. Look, we want you. We think you can help us. But if you don't walk a straight and narrow path, guess what? You're going to be gone, okay? No harm, no foul. You're going to be out of here."
Well, that's a
Kevin,
given.
He didn't have any of these issues when he was playing, okay? Nobody ever heard of him off-the-field stuff and Instagram and all.
You're right.
The 49ers.
You're right about
He's
that.
just bored right now. He's probably bored. Is he mature about it? No, he's very immature what he's doing. He's just probably sitting there bored, and the more people that comment on it, the more he's liking it. He's thriving off that now. But if he passes his medicals, well, I'm all in still, Kevin. He's going to help us, man. He's still a gamer. So, but that's how, my mood hadn't changed at all. I say if he's able to play for us here in a few weeks, guess what? He'll be one of us, and we'll roll with it until he gets out of hand. But if he gets out of hand, they're going to probably have him on a short leash. They're going to tell him, you're going to be out of here. So,
look, the idea of him on the field, fully healthy, what he was in 23, fully happy, coachable, growing, maturing, people get second and third chances, and especially when you have talent, and he has talent. That's been the vision for me all along. But God, Bobby, at this point, hasn't somebody said, dude, stop with this? Not to mention, you're putting your potential future employer in an uncomfortable situation. Don't do that. You already did that 2 summers ago when you put the video out from their OTA practice or their minicamp practice. I mean, that was obviously stupid and immature. There's just so many. At some point, you do need legitimate human beings in your building that you feel good about. And it's not a sport that fills its locker rooms with all good human beings. I understand that. That's why I'm saying immaturity and crazy have never been disqualifiers. Felonies haven't been disqualifiers. And I want to win. I want them to win. And I want another weapon offensively. And I know how good he is. I was sitting here back in 23 taking calls from people saying, you think Aiyuk's as good as Terry? Yes, I do. I think he's potentially better. But man, and I can't imagine that he's helping himself get out of San Francisco with his behavior. That's part of it. It's like if you really want to play in Washington, take a deep breath and figure out the right way to get out of San Francisco, because this hasn't worked so far. Now, Schefter and others think it'll happen at the beginning of training camp. We'll see. All right, if you're on hold, stay there. 301-230-0980. We have a line open as well if you want to jump on. The latest Brandon Aiyuk video, we'll play it again when we come back for you. Are you in or out? Just a temperature check on Brandon Aiyuk. I am now out on Aiyuk. I've been in on Aiyuk, but remember, all of this is prefaced with, I am going to bend the knee to Adam Peters and trust in what he decides to do. They're going to have much more information, clearly, than we will have on the situation that started back in 2023 up until now in terms of what's happened in San Francisco, and they'll have all the medical and psychological. And they've got a quarterback who knows the guy better than anybody does, at least reportedly. But, man, I have a feeling he's steering himself off of a road that he might not be able to get back onto. 301-230-0980, Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com.
And if I'm crazy or if I'm capping, so them boys cut me today. And I'll sign with the Commanders tomorrow. And we'll see who capping.
So what I didn't know and what I learned during the break is that prior to that video that he put out yesterday, he actually put out another video with no audio. But that was a video where he is holding an NFL football with a Commanders logo on it. And a graphic on the video says, quote, the best sport in the world, the best league in the world, and the best team in the world. The next part of his story is a photo of himself with a graphic that says, and I almost forgot, the best wide receiver in the world. And then came the, if I'm crazy or if I'm capping. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. In or out on Aiyuk as we get more revealed about this young person. Very young in terms of his maturity level. There's just so much to this right now. Again, I would just go back to this. There are mistakes that are made on both sides, and there have been mistakes made by him in his frustration here during this offseason. But at some point, you deal with it. You go deal with it. He could have shown up for OTAs. He could walk into Kyle's office today or into John Lynch's office today with his agent and say, what do I need to do to get out of here? What do we need to do? I'm in shape. I'm ready to play football. I want to play football. But apparently that's not the tact that he's taken. He's gone to social media to rip his current employer. I don't know how that helps him. We'll find out. He hasn't been released yet. Maybe it'll happen today. Maybe it won't happen until the end of next month. Maybe it won't happen until the end of August before they are reportedly going to have to stroke a check to him in early September. I don't know how, if you're John Lynch and you are Kyle Shanahan, how this level of communication helps him get out of San Francisco, helps him get to the place where he clearly wants to be, Washington. I also don't think all of the Commanders talk from him makes, is super smart. I'm not saying Washington's tampered with him. In fact, I absolutely would be shocked if they have. We haven't heard anything from them about Brandon Aiyuk. But every single time he implies or says he's going to sign with the Commanders once he's out, it certainly leaves people with the thought of, well, he knows Washington's going to sign him. How would he know that? He's not supposed to know that. I doubt, by the way, very seriously, that this would lead to any sort of, call or investigation. But again, don't give the impression that there's been communication, even with their quarterback. He's part of the organization. Yes, they can communicate as friends, but Jaden can't tell him, hey, man, if you get released, we're going to sign you. Jaden, really hasn't said much. When he's been asked about Aiyuk this spring with OTAs and the recent mini camp, give me the last thing he was asked about Aiyuk and what he said. I think Ben actually asked him about
I've been trying to find it for like 20 minutes in our system.
But it was very benign, right?
It was incredibly benign. He said something to the effect of like, I hope everything's good with his football future.
Yeah. The only thing that Jaden said is, I think Ben said something about, will there be, any new participants in your workouts out in California? And he said, probably you'll see on social media. And people took that and ran with it to say, maybe we're going to see Jaden throwing with Brandon Aiyuk. He's allowed to do that. You're allowed to work out with players from other teams. All right. Back to the phone lines, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I don't know. The whole thing just, for me, I have the stomach for a lot of this stuff. I've always had it for over the years for, talent that can help you win. Now, the past regime, you knew the judgment wasn't going to be very good in terms of, immaturity on that end as well. and incompetence on that end. I feel much differently about the current regime for sure, and I will absolutely, as a fan of this team, if they sign him, I'm going to be supportive of it, and I'm going to be excited because I know what kind of player that Brandon Aiyuk can be, and I know the kind of impact he could have on this team in 2026. But as far as today, it's the first time after yesterday that I felt, yeah, it's time to move away from Crazy Town and let's go get Diggs. Mo, your thoughts. Go.
Yeah, I'm out, Kev, or Brandon Aiyuk. And my one thing is, too, I don't like it for Jaden that we're going to ask him to, hey, have a comeback season, establish yourself as a top 5 quarterback. And on top of that, have to babysit another grown-ass man, every week, whether or not he's getting the touches he can get. There's going to be games where Terry gets more targets. Is Brandon Aiyuk going to be happy with that?
She gets more targets.
Yeah. Guy.
No doubt.
Yeah. I'd rather get a guy like Brandon, Stephon Diggs, posting videos, working out across the street in Maryland. Stephon's a veteran. He showed what presence he can bring with the Patriots last year. Bring that in the locker room with Terry and help raise these young receivers we got.
Now, let me just tell you something about Steph, because he's certainly, been a guy that's been upset with number of targets in the past. So he's in that wide receiver group that, demands the football. But I also think at this age, Stephon Diggs is looking for a place where, he can still be the guy, and he wouldn't be. Look, if he comes in, he's clearly the number 2. If Aiyuk comes in, you've got a serious question as a defensive coordinator. If we're going to double somebody, who are we doubling? I bet you it's more Aiyuk than Terry, which would tell you right then who the true number 1 would be. If Aiyuk's what he was at the end of 23.
That's the thing. That's the thing I don't know, because me too with Aiyuk is he has the benefit of working in the Kyle Shanahan system. That system makes guys, you see with McVay and Cooper Kupp, will Cooper Kupp be who he is outside of the McVay system, outside of the Shanahan system? That's the thing that scares me about Brandon Aiyuk.
There's a big difference between Kupp and Aiyuk. Aiyuk's a legitimate vertical threat, like a scary vertical threat. And Kupp is a phenomenal route runner and has been. But by the way, keep in mind what kind of offense Washington's moving to. It's going to look very similar to a Kyle, McVay offense. You're going to see under center. You're going to see a lot of zone run. You're going to see a lot of play action. You're going to see a lot of boot off of play action. So the offense is probably perfect for Brandon Aiyuk. Mo, thanks. Samaj, go ahead.
Hey, Coach. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, Samaj?
Thanks for taking my call, Matt. Kevin, where you are now, I've been for over a month or so, probably maybe a couple months, probably since the start of the NBA playoffs. My thing is, I don't like diva receivers. Never have. I like dogs, and there's some guys that are both, but dogs are usually adamant and passionate for the team and for the success of the team, whereas the diva guys, it's all about them first and then the team. I don't like guys like that. I like dogs. Give me the Art Monks. Give me the Gary Clarks. Give me the Andre Johnson, the DeAndre Hopkins, the Steve Smiths. I want those type of guys. Terry McLaurin. I want those type of guys in the fold. You mentioned it a little while ago. We're in the midst of a regime change and an organizational comeback. Yeah, we flashed Jaden's first year, got all the way to the NFC chip. Then we come back the next year, we win 5 games or something like that last year. We had a terrible year. So we're still in the process of trying to reestablish Bergen Gold as a legitimate top 5 championship competitive organization. And we don't need anybody that is like this kid. I'm from Baltimore, and the youngins around town, their favorite word right now is dummy. They use dummy for everything. And right now I'm looking at Brandon Aiyuk. He's the poster child. He can come up with a T-shirt with his face on, and on the bottom of it say dummy.
Yeah.
I'd rather just pass on the guy. That's where I'm at. Thanks for taking my call, fellas.
Thanks. I think that's where I am right now. Well, I am there right now. But at the same time, let me be clear. if they do sign him, I'm going to believe that they signed him because they believe he can do what he did before he got hurt. And just for those of you who watch our team and not the rest of the league, he is legit. I mean, he is, and I remember 22 and 23. That guy in San Francisco is climbing the charts on the best receivers list. He is that good. And he would be an absolute difference maker for this team offensively if you got that player. There is no doubt in my mind that you'd get a lot more out of the Aiyuk from 22-23 than you would from Diggs. But you got to know that he's capable of doing that without disruption. And then you have to understand that even if he says all the right things, you are one bad event away from him going scorched earth on you. Now, the good news is you're not going to sign him to a big long-term deal. You're going to sign him to just a prove-it deal where you can cut him loose at the first sign of disruption or trouble. Or, by the way, lack of productivity. You know, he could be a darling when he gets here, but the knee never really corrected, and he's not as good as he was. So you could turn him loose for that reason, too. I mean, there's no chance based on the behavior alone, let alone the injury that he's coming off of, that you give him anything other than, you know, a base salary, and everything else has to be earned. And there's nothing guaranteed in the deal. Zero guaranteed dollars. You may want to ask him to pay you for the opportunity if he wants it as much. Ian, go ahead.
Kevin, welcome home. I have been on this position for a long, long time. And everything you've said, obviously, I've said before and concur with, and I agree with that last line that he should pay to want to come here. But I'm going to keep harping back to that point of what does it tell you that Adam Peters hasn't denied this yet? And my angle is that Jaden Daniels and his momager have a lot more influence over this organization than anybody should.
A little bit more respect. She's actually a certified NFL agent, you know, and apparently very bright.
Care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter. It does matter because you were incredibly condescending with the way you described her. She's actually apparently super bright, and she's a certified NFL agent.
Again,
gratuitous.
That doesn't
Move on.
change my position.
What does it tell you? What does it tell you about Jaden? What does it tell you about Jaden and anybody else around Jaden? Go ahead. Tell me.
It makes me question his judgment.
How do you know what his judgment is right now?
If my son was friends with someone like Brandon Aiyuk, I would tell him to stop being friends with him.
Okay.
That person is
Let me
not
tell you something.
mentally
There's
stable.
a point in which that ship sails. You know, we're not talking about an 11-year-old. We're not talking about a 12 or a 13-year-old. Jaden's a grown man. We have no idea what the state of that relationship actually is, or, by the way, ever was, other than they were friends as teammates. We don't know that Jaden and his close friends aren't talking behind the scenes. He's gone nuts. We always knew he was crazy, but now he's straight crazy. I don't want anything to do with it. We don't have any clue what Jaden really thinks about this. Judging him based off of how you view their friendship, I don't know anything about their friendship other than they were teammates and friends. And by the way, they're never going to publicly, say anything negative about former teammates when you're classy like Jaden is. I don't know what their relationship is. So there's no way I could question Jaden on his judgment because I don't specifically know how close they are and what that relationship is.
So let me phrase it back to you this way. If it was clear that Jaden Daniels is embarrassed and doesn't want to be associated with this type of action, don't you think he would have gone to Adam Peters or someone in charge saying, hey, I don't think he's a right fit for this organization?
Maybe he has. How do you know he hasn't?
So he said that, and then Adam Peters, who used to work for Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, has gone against him, saying he wants to sign this player. That mental gymnastics doesn't work out. He's dissed Adam Peters' former boss over and over. Why would Adam Peters be inclined to sign Brandon Aiyuk? That makes no sense.
We don't know that he is.
Okay. You just said to Ben Standing last week that don't you think if he wasn't interested that he would have put out a statement being like, we're not interested in this player?
I do believe that makes the most sense. But I also said that it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to sign him once he becomes available. It means that I think at the very least they were planning on kicking the tires. But we don't know how they feel today. They may feel differently today. And by the way, the other thing, and somebody pointed this out, I do think that it would be beneficial for them to get their name out of his mouth if they don't have any intention of signing him. And they could do that by, leaking something to a Schefter or to a Rappaport, etc. With that said, if they're still interested in somebody else, let's just say Diggs, leverage-wise, having him out there as a possibility probably gives them a little bit of leverage. Not enough for it to make sense to me if with every passing video that now has become much more Washington focused. But I don't know where they are today. I would say still, until I hear that they're not interested, I would suggest that at the very least, there's a part of them that wants to kick the tires if and when he becomes available. But I don't know that they've come to the conclusion. He implies that they've come to the conclusion that this is a formality. But would you believe him at this point?
No, I wouldn't believe him, but I just don't understand the way this has gone about from both sides. Obviously, Aiyuk is unintelligent, stupid, unprofessional, all that. But I think Adam Peters, Jane Daniels, his mom, whomever, has got to be in front of this. And I'm not a Diggs fan.
Well,
like
first
you
of
are,
all, there's nothing to be in
there.
front of technically. I mean, perception-wise, there is. From a PR standpoint, maybe. But you know what? At the same time, part of me is like, if they're just sitting back and focused on everything that they have now, and it's a true statement, David Blau says, I really like what we have, offensively in our receiver room now, they're not required to get involved in this, and they haven't. Nothing's been said from them. Nothing can be said. They may think that anything, including a leak, could be, construed as somehow they were, tampering or something. Maybe the safest bet is to say nothing. By the way, which is different from years past. You can't stand this regime for some reason. I would suggest to you that just not saying anything is at least a major step in the right direction compared to the way it used to be. And they haven't said anything. So we don't really know where.
But we're not.
I have thought, gut, is that they would be interested.
Yeah, the goal isn't to be better than Bruce Allen and Ron Rivera. The goal is to compete with Howie Roseman.
Or Dan Snyder and everybody else. I understand that. Right. It's a low bar. I get it. All right, I want to move on. Thank you, Ian. Aveen, go ahead. Aiyuk, where are you today? In or out?
Hey, Kevin, I'm still in on Aiyuk. I heard you say that you haven't heard anybody like this offseason really talk positively about Aiyuk. I'll just say, George Kittle on a podcast like months ago said that all he knew about Aiyuk when he was with him was that he was a great teammate, and that Aiyuk reached out to him after he got hurt in the playoff game, saying, I love you, bro. And then even in this most recent podcast appearance, Kittle said he makes it a point to get to practice early and watch Aiyuk train, meaning, this is an all-pro tight end who's impressed with how Aiyuk trains and the work ethic, yes. And, the thing that still gets me excited is Aiyuk saying, Kittle saying back in October that he watched him training and he still has it. He can run 22 miles and stop on a dime.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still into this. He offers us something nobody else available can, unless you were to make a big trade. And with the Sherman stuff, I don't really buy that. I mean, all we heard about Aiyuk and we knew about Aiyuk with reporting all
Grant
that
Cohn
was that-
told us something similar, that he was not happy even before the summer of 2024 with the way with his Super Bowl targets. I was reminded of that during the break. People said, remember, your guy from San Francisco said the same thing Sherman said about the Super Bowl. So there may be some truth to it.
Yeah, I'll just say, on the field, he was known as somebody who blocks his butt off. He's willing to do the dirty work over the middle. He takes hits. Like,
and now he may be cuckoo.
Maybe, but I mean that was his perception before this contract stuff. And I'll just say, and you probably don't totally agree with it, but I still think this stems from the weird way the 49ers handled his contract extension, where they had a trade in place for him. He probably thought he was getting traded to Pittsburgh, and at the last second they pulled it, and Kyle Shanahan said, no, actually we really need him. And I think the reason they wanted to trade him is because
it's called professional sports. People change their minds. Things happen. They paid him a massive deal. And as he suggested and gloated about, he fleeced them for $50 million.
But it's still uncommon if you're going to make a huge commitment to a receiver to him being on the verge of trading him.
Well, I think Grant Cohn said, Aveen, something that I didn't know necessarily before he was on, which is they were very, very mixed organizationally on whether to bring this guy back after he was turning into, as you know, and I know, because we watched the rest of the league, into a truly high-level elite receiver. So there were concerns organizationally, about giving him that kind of money. That's
I'll say
they did it.
My own view. Yeah, my own view on that is they already had so much money committed to skill position players. McCaffrey, Kittle, and Kyle Shanahan has this reputation of being a wide receiver guru expert. He was a former wide receiver, and he has a track record of being, really good at drafting and developing wide receivers. So they're like, we already have all this money committed at the skill positions. Can we just get away with drafting another wide receiver? And it's just too much money to have committed to that skill position group. That's my own thought of why they would want to trade him.
But he was the one he was the strongest advocate for paying Aiyuk and then not trading him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But the organization, I thought maybe we can just draft and develop somebody else. But I'll just say again, Kevin, the biggest point I think is that, John Keim has for months been saying that we're interested in him. And the fact that we're interested in him, despite all this stuff, despite the void in money, despite the speeding and recording himself, it just makes me think that they know more to the story than we do. And I think Adam Pear's view is...
I've prefaced all of these conversations, Aveen, with that precise thing. They know more than we do. And I have felt, as you know, all along that this would end up resulting in him playing for them. But you know what? Things change. Things, the circumstances change. In the last 2 weeks, you don't think somebody in that building that may have been super interested in signing him when he was released is saying, good God, what are we getting into? Maybe this is, the pushback that we did get from some of the people in the 49ers organization. This is what they're talking about. Do we really want this? Things change. I'm with you, and I felt the same way all along. I thought that they would figure it out and hopefully end up finding out enough to know that it's okay to give him a prove-it deal, bring him in, because we both know what kind of player he could be. But I'm starting to wonder whether or not he is literally veered off the path that he was on with respect to Washington. We'll see. They know more than we do. That's the bottom line. I gotta get to a break. Sorry. Chris, Paulie, anybody else on hold, stay there. We got another line open. If you want to jump on, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Brandon Aiyuk dropped another beauty last night. Are you in or out? It's a temperature check on the number one off-season subject. We needed one because we didn't really have one. But we've got one, and we'll see how this plays out over the next few months. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget you can watch this show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. When he says if the 49ers cut me, I'll sign with the Commanders tomorrow. Dude, use your brain. Get them to cut you. This isn't working so far. You had an opportunity to show up at OTAs. You're under contract, even if you were on the didn't report list. Show up. You're ready. You're healthy. Get cleared. Get reinstated. Get ready to play football. Force their hand. I mean, it doesn't seem that hard, but he doesn't want to do that. Like he expresses his desire to play with Washington. He expresses how dumb and stupid and petty the 49ers are, but he's a player under contract with a big union behind him. He could force the 49ers' hand if he's healthy. Show up, get medically cleared, get off that list, and say you're ready to play football. Hadn't done that yet. Chris in Annapolis, where are you today on Brandon Aiyuk? In or out?
I'm still in, and I think it's because I'm kind of stupid, and I feel like you can talk to anybody and figure anything out.
Self-deprecation's the way to go. Always, Chris. Good job.
I mean, look, you always think you can make something work. Here's my concern. Even if you make something work, let's say you vibe with this guy, everybody's good, and then 8 weeks or 10 weeks or a year in, he starts flipping out, and you go back to the agreement you made and you cut him. What does that do to your relationship with Jaden at that point? And my whole thing is, in the end, I want Jaden here 10 years. I don't want to introduce a potential poison pill that could create a bigger problem down the road that you can kind of foresee, but you don't think it's going to happen because Jaden's such a great guy, but it could.
Wait a minute, you're starting to confuse me. You said I'm still in. Isn't the way you started? Now it sounds like you're actually out on him.
Well, I told you. Well, because I feel like I can make everything work, and that's just naive of me. But
yeah.
But the point is, like, for real, what if you got to cut Aiyuk somewhere down the road, and Jaden doesn't like it? Now you've created a problem with Jaden just to give this guy a chance. Just sign Diggs and move on. So I'm against it. You're right.
No, I hear you. I think the Jaden stuff. Look, the immediate thing would be he would be on an incentive-laden deal. He would be in a position where he would have to produce in a major way to not only up the money he earns in 2026, but provide him with a really huge opportunity in 2027, whether that be unrestricted free agency, whether that be an extended contract with Washington, whether that be a franchise tag in Washington. And I think that's the one thing you can focus on as potentially an issue, that he would have major needs coming in on a prove-it deal, and that could, put Jaden into a difficult spot. Personally, I don't even know if money's the driver for him. He gave up $30 to $40 million in voided guarantees, and all he had to do was show up and get his knee looked at twice a month, or maybe only once a month. But still, if the driver is he wants to be the best, he's going to require, targets. Beyond that, in terms of looking at what happens if the relationship goes south, look, a guy like this, I'm gonna buy stock in. Wherever he goes, it will eventually blow up. He's already revealed a lot about sort of true colors, character, etc. This is a guy that it'll blow up on everywhere he goes. It'll just be a matter of, will there be pain for the employer? And you got to put yourself into a position where there wouldn't be. He's already proven he'll go scorched earth. And there's a much easier path for him, professionally, maturity-wise, to get to where he wants to get to. He hasn't figured it out. Either he's a pure dummy, or it's just immaturity, or he's just not listening to advice, whatever it is. But the down the road Jaden stuff is not, I don't even know what that relationship really is. Like, one of the things I actually feel really good about Jaden Daniels, as most of you know, and I would bet that he makes really good decisions personally. After watching what I've been watching, I wonder how close they really are. Paulie, go ahead. Hail to the W.
Big guy. Hail to the W, man. How you doing?
Good.
That's good. That's good, man. I'm all in, man. All the way in. I don't care about what he's saying on social media. I mean, this is what this generation is. It's about being visible. He's mad. He's pissed off. He wants to be out of there. They're not letting him out of there. You know, I don't care about his relationship with Jaden. Is it going to hurt? What I am tired of hearing is people talking about Jaden like he's just a mentally fragile person.
Yeah, I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I think he's totally capable of moving forward with or without him as a professional.
I mean, we've all had friends or possibly gotten a friend a job and he fumbled it, messed it up, and got himself fired. That don't mean we will stop being friends. That doesn't mean we don't work together no more. You know, we're still gonna hang out or do whatever we do. But so that aspect of it, I'm done with it. You know, as far as him complaining about targets, name me a receiver that don't complain about targets, man.
I agree with that, but what he let it morph into, the social media stuff is the delivery system for that generation. Okay, agreed. It's not that; it's the actions, Paulie, or the inaction at this point. You know, if there's really something to him being motivated to play football and to play football in Washington, do something about it. He could have done something about it already, and he's choosing to do something that's not necessarily, helping him get to that goal, which is to play here. And I think in the process, we're learning a lot about through the inaction, we're learning a lot about him. And with all due respect to all these young people on social media and blowing it off as it's just what this generation does in terms of adults, it does impact the way people think about those people. And so I don't think that it's been very wise, and the lack of action on his part, to me, is a big red flag.
You don't think it's wise because you come from a different time. You're older. You're more.
I just said the same thing. I just said that you throw it off as young people, but people my age will definitely react the way I'm reacting today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the talent, man. I'm looking at our schedule, man. We need talent out on the field. And I don't care what this man is doing. If he has us targeted as a team where he wants to come to, then I'm going to wait for them to cut him. In his mind, he's convinced no matter what he does, they're not going to just release him because he showed up for OTAs. I mean, really? I really believe they canceled their mini camp because they probably thought he was.
That's absurd. That's ridiculous.
It might be absurd. It might be.
That's you'd never compromise 89 other players for this.
They're doing it
in terms of getting work. That's just not true.
Right,
that's not true.
Okay, but they're compromising right now. They're compromising their players right now.
No, they aren't.
They're dragging this thing out.
No, they aren't.
Why do not?
Because we've learned from players over the years that this kind of thing never plays this way in locker rooms and in buildings the way it plays publicly with fans and media.
The organization is compromising themselves by dragging this out.
More people seem to agree with them. More people are saying he's nuts.
It doesn't matter what more people say.
Well, then how is the organization putting themselves at risk?
What I'm saying is three sides of every story. They're just as wrong as Aiyuk is. I'm not defending Aiyuk as he's right. I'm saying they're just as wrong as he's wrong. As far as do I want him on my team? I do want him on my team. I see Philly, I see Dallas, and I see Seattle the first 3 weeks. And I want to win.
I want that guy on my team too. What would make you not want him? What would make you not want him?
I seen and heard Gary Clark complain about not getting targets.
Yeah, but every action Gary Clark had was about playing football and winning, and it was team driven. Let me ask you a question. You haven't heard the question, or you've refused to answer. What could happen between now and the beginning of the season where you would say, I don't want him?
Only thing that would happen is we see a report of Brandon Aiyuk domestic violence.
Okay, I'm talking about in terms. The medical would scare you if it's not good, right?
But we're not going to see that until he gets released.
I'm asking you though, if you were in this position, what would turn you off on him?
I just told you it would have to be some type of police matter.
Yeah. All right.
And I don't mean speeding, which everybody in the common
that's
world
absurd.
does.
Yeah, I mean we've had 4 domestic violence, accusations or arrests since his misdemeanor arrest warrant issue. Yeah.
Right, or if all of a sudden there's a report that he got rushed to the hospital because he OD'd or something like that.
What?
But outside of that, if he OD'd, overdosed, or some type
Oh, you're
of
saying
drug
if
or something like
okay.
that.
Right.
That's,
look.
Other than that,
all right.
sign him up, give him the helmet, raise hell.
Give him a helmet and a uniform and tell him to get out there and run the 9 routes and scare defenses. If he ends up in that position for us, I'm going to be all in because I love the player. But I want him. The next action, the next communication from him needs to be an action. Brandon Aiyuk filed for reinstatement into the NFL. Brandon Aiyuk and his agent requested a meeting with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. That's the kind of professional, mature approach that I'd like to start to see.
How do you know his agent haven't already attempted to do this already?
We don't know anything, Paulie. How do we know that Jaden actually wants him? How do we know our team actually wants him? We don't know anything. It's all speculation.
You know what I know is? I know Philly, Dallas, and Seattle in the first 3 weeks of the season.
Beyond that, I know that this dude was literally climbing into the top 10 of receivers in the league at the end of 2023.
One more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing I'm going to say. And honestly, to hear the way he's talking with his bravado and his confidence in himself, that tells me he is healthy. Because if you're not healthy, you're not going to get out here and run your mouth and act like
unless you're nuts. Yeah. Unless you're delusional.
Stop with that delusional, man. That's
stop with that. What do you mean? I mean, there's clear indications that he's not completely all there. It's not, like I said, it's not a disqualifier. Okay.
Like I said,
what should drive him, if he's driven, Paulie, get out of San Francisco. Do things that can help you get out of there. That's all.
Hey, San Francisco, let him go.
Why?
What are they dragging their feet on?
Why
not?
Well, why do they need to let him go?
You say
he's on the reserved left team list. Apparently, they can't even let him go at this point until he's applied for reinstatement.
Hey, I'm all in. Sign him up. Let's go.
I know you are.
We good.
I'm a little bit different today.
Hey, big guy.
I could change my mind though by the end of the week. Let me get another one in here. If you're on hold, stay there.
To the W, baby.
Yeah, if you're on hold, stay there. We'll do another quick phone round, and then we will switch subjects at noon. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. This from Devon. Devon writes, Kevin, you know what Coach Thompson would be saying about fool and corpse. Never forget that. Yeah, Devon. It's one of my favorite all-time Coach Thompson sayings, truisms, really. And he might be saying, if he were on the air today, alive and well, about Brandon Aiyuk, what he said many, many times. I'd rather have to tame a fool than resurrect a corpse. That is something that many of us who were lucky enough to be around and in the building with Coach Thompson have repeated many, many times. You'd much rather, as a coach, have to tame a fool than resurrect a corpse, meaning you'd much rather have a bit crazy but super competitive than the guy that is soft and non-competitive. And it is one of my all-time favorite Coach Thompson sayings. The problem with that is it applies to Aiyuk. Is, yeah, he's probably a fool and he's a bit crazy, but his actions aren't speaking to somebody who's highly competitive. If he's highly competitive, this would all be about getting back out onto the field. He would have already shown up with some crazy at OTAs. Cut me, in the faces of Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. There's a big avoidance, factor in this. It certainly would appear from the outside looking in that he's avoiding doing what he needs to do to play football sooner rather than later, because there is a path. It's been explained. Show up, force their hand, apply for reinstatement, get off that list that you're on right now, the reserved left squad list. Make them either play you or cut you. But he hasn't done that. That would be the sign of a true badass competitor, is to have shown up at OTAs in the best shape of his life, ready to play football. And in some of these communications, showing us that he's ready to play football. The full part appears to be correct, though. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. Well, there's a new Brandon Aiyuk Instagram video out.
Damn it.
This one's kind of funny, I think, although there is
it does make me laugh.
There's a quote in here, a title here that we're trying to figure out. Might be some Eazy-E lyrics.
I think he's just shouting out Chrome Hearts because he has made posts in the past.
Let's get everybody up to speed. It's 42 seconds. He walks backwards into an empty closet, but it isn't completely empty. There's a backpack sitting up on a ledge in the closet. He walks to the backpack. He's dressed in what appears to be pajamas. And he opens up the backpack. It's filled with cash, and he starts taking the cash out and throwing it all over the floor inside the closet. And then the title to this video is Get Ready With Me, Chrome to the Dome. Have you figured out what that translates to? What he's trying to get across?
If I can for a minute, my wide receiver brain translator is working really hard here.
Mm-hmm.
So the caption, I believe, is a reference to a lot of just get ready with me videos that have gone, super viral on Instagram, TikTok, things like that. Now, the Chrome to the Dome part is, I think, a reference to Chrome Hearts, a fashion brand that Brandon Aiyuk has shouted out previously. If you remember the post from, I think it was June 12th, where he's in the back of the Sprinter van.
Is it? Do they do hats? So is it
Chrome
to his head?
So
to the dome?
I mean, they do everything: hats, shoes, clothes. I'm pretty sure that these pajamas that he has on is probably Chrome Hearts fashion.
Okay.
And possibly even the backpack that he's pulling all of this cash out of. But the video,
it looks like he's throwing the cash away, which he's done already.
Which I think is the message. Like, he doesn't care about the money. He's ready for the next, getting ready for the next thing.
Got
it. That's what I think is going on here.
He just kind of looks funny. He looks like he's having fun in this one.
He's having a great time. He likes to troll.
I
respect it.
Yeah, I don't know how much I respect it.
I mean, I don't want him to play for my team, but I respect the troll.
This guy really, it just feels a little bit, like he is off balanced here. Just over the last 2.5 weeks.
Just a little?
Yeah. Well, can we tell the denomination of the bills?
They look like 50s, and I see a little blue in there, so I think there's some hundreds sprinkled in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, everybody. Just stay tuned. There's just constantly, this guy loves to communicate. He loves to do everything but figure out a way to get back out onto the field. Now, the good news is he's not missing any time right now. These teams are all, coaches are taking vacations. This is their time off. This is the time off for NFL teams. There's never really any time off. But if there is time off, if there is vacation time for the Dan Quinns and the Adam Peters and the front office people of the world, this is when they take it, between June, end of off-season activities, and before training camp begins. I'm pretty sure Dan goes to Hawaii every year this time to recharge those batteries. All right, Will Dawkins, the general manager of your Washington Wizards, along with A.J. DeBonsa, they held the A.J. DeBonsa introductory presser today. Tomorrow is going to be the second-round pick. I liked the pick of Opara from Tennessee. Really, really interesting defensive big man, for sure. Super raw and not necessarily anywhere near polished offensively, but 6'10" with a 9'4" reach. He was a shot blocker, he was a rebounder, and he was a lob threat offensively. That's pretty much how he scored, either that or on offensive putbacks. But they traded 2 picks to get him at 46 because their picks were at 51 and 60. So Dawkins, was asked about Anthony Davis and what the status of Anthony Davis playing this year, potentially getting a contract extension in August. Here's what the general manager, Will Dawkins, said.
You mentioned Anthony Davis. Before we let you go here, we just saw a big extension for Trae Young be reported. Are you expecting to reach a contract extension with Anthony Davis here, Will?
Yeah, can't comment on the Trae one just yet, but we feel pretty good about where that's headed. And with AD, again, he wants to be here. We want him here. We'll have that conversation in the middle of August when we can officially have that. But again, I think we're building something here in DC where people want to be here and want to be a part of the turnaround. And our fans are behind the guys that are here and excited to add AJ and everyone that we added tonight in the draft and Opara as well. So we'll see what happens in Summer League and kind of go from there.
So, I like to hear, because I think the only way that they can be truly competitive next year is if Anthony Davis is here and he plays a lot of games. It's, AJ DeBonsa is not going to turn them from a 17-win team into a 45-win team, but Anthony Davis could, along with everybody else. But he is the guy that would be in position, if he's healthy and can play like Anthony Davis has played in the past, to really turn around the fortunes in one season, go from literally terrible, losing 25 of the team's last 26 games, to potentially a 42, 43, 44-win team in the postseason. But you got to have AD, because it's not going to be Trae Young and Trey Johnson and AJ DeBonsa and Bilal Coulibaly and Alex Sarr. They're not going to turn 17 into 40+. But with Anthony Davis, they could do that. Now, you have to say, as the general manager at this point, he wants to be here. We want him to be here. We'll have those conversations officially. Because if you are considering, if a trade is a possibility, you don't want to lose leverage by looking like you're interested in trading him. There have been reports, over the last few weeks that it's very possible that Washington could, if they do not and are unable to sign him to a contract extension, would be interested in trading him even before the season begins. I wonder really what the value is for Anthony Davis at this point, because you didn't have to give up a hell of a lot to get him. I thought that was a good deal for Washington. And until he plays again and shows that he's Anthony Davis, I could certainly see a scenario where he plays enough games in the first half of the season to show that he's healthy and he's Anthony Davis again. And Washington's trending is maybe a play-in team, and they decide to leverage it at that point, with still the rest of this upcoming season's contract left at $58.5 million. And then him holding the player option that he holds for 27-28 for nearly 60. I think it's $62.5 million. That would be the time where the organization could actually get legitimate value back for him. They're not going to get that now. They're not going to get that before the season begins. He hasn't played since they traded for him, and that was considered to be very light in terms of the compensation that they gave up to get Anthony Davis. I really hope that Will Dawkins, Michael Winger and company are serious about Anthony Davis in this program for, a few years. I don't want to wait 4 or 5 years for AJ DeBonsa and all the other young players to really develop. And because right now, Cade Cunningham got it done sort of quickly in Detroit, along with everything else they had. But, Oklahoma City had to trade for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to accelerate it. Is that comparable to trading for Trae Young and Anthony Davis? I don't know. Shai, obviously, a bigger upside than and much younger than Trae Young, at the time that they acquired him. I want to see them compete now. I don't want to wait for, all right, let's see what AJ DeBonsa is. Let's see what these young guys do. We're going to try to win, but we're going to stay young. We're going to play all these guys. We'll make a big move if we think a big move is there. In many ways, Anthony Davis could prove to be the big move. I mean, in combination with Trae Young, but Anthony Davis is the guy that turns the fortunes around quickly because he's a legitimate top 10 player when he plays and he's healthy. He's a difference maker. He's the difference between them winning 44 or 45 next year and 25 or 26 next year. It's not Trae Young. It's not DeBonsa in his rookie year. I pointed this out multiple times yesterday. Cooper Flagg had a phenomenal rookie season. They won 26 games. So it's about Anthony Davis playing and playing a lot and being a healthy player and playing to that level that we've seen him when he's been at his best. That makes them a formidable team in the East if Anthony Davis is healthy and playing like he's played in the past. And I would love to see that because, again, call it impotence at this point, but I don't want to wait 3-4 years because that's what it is. If you go young and you stay young, or the only veteran that really is a big part of what you're doing is Trae Young, yeah, you're in a, we're looking 29, 30, 28, 29 at the earliest before, you hope they end up looking like Detroit looks in the East. But that's if DeBonsa ends up being what Cade Cunningham turned into as the number one player in the draft a few years ago. You said, what did the Caps do? I was going to let you talk about the Caps after making the trade with St. Louis for Kyrou. They did something else yesterday that really helped them.
That they did. So they engaged in a sign-and trade with the Buffalo Sabres for one Alex Tuck. Now, you may remember him from the Stanley Cup final in 2018 when the Caps played the Vegas Golden Knights. He played for the Golden Knights, and if you remember Braden Holtby's The Save, he was on the losing end of that. So he's had a great career so far. He really found himself over these last couple of years, especially in Buffalo. He's been just lighting it up with like 60 points per year, a really good goal scorer, a really strong top-line guy. But one thing that he and Jordan Kyrou have in common is they're really good at scoring off the rush. And the Caps were not, I think they finished bottom in the league or something like that in that category last year. So this is another big addition for them that's going to be on the top line. He's a big guy. He's 6'4", 220. So pairing him with guys like Tom Wilson, Ilya, and Alexei Protas, it's going to be a massive amount of size that teams are going to have a lot of trouble to deal with. So this is a big deal for them. An 8-year contract at $10.5 million. So it's a long one that's worth a lot of money. I'm not 100% sure if he will last the full term. So we will kind of see as time goes on, but they're getting better. They're doing a lot of things. They're making a lot of moves, and there could be more moves in the future, especially with the draft coming up and things like that. We still have a first-round pick despite trading 16 to St. Louis for Kyrou. So we still have that Anaheim pick and have some options there. So I'm excited about the Caps, excited to see where they're going to go. But yeah, they're adding a lot of beef to this top end of the line.
All right. They are busy here, and the draft is tomorrow, correct?
Believe that is correct.
I think it is. I think that's what I read yesterday. Is there anything less visible in terms of drafts than the NHL draft? Or is that just because I don't care about it?
I think it's probably because you don't care about it as much. They did have it at the Sphere last year, so that was kind of an interesting draw. But this year, it's going to be at KeyBank Center in Buffalo.
Okay. No, I think in terms of the drafts, NFL 1, NBA 2, count a few spots before you get to the baseball draft 3, and then it's the hockey draft 4. In terms of overall sort of exposure. But then again, that's sort of the lineup of the sports in general in terms of popularity. I mean, baseball and the NBA are close, I guess. All right. I want to talk about Caitlin Clark and what happened to her last night. We'll get to that next.
I mean, Caitlin to the ground, and that's a hand to the neck, and then Alyssa Thomas steps over her. See, that's the kind of stuff that can incite some future trouble.
Look, I'll admit going in, I don't have all of the details of games played previously this year and beefs between teams in the WNBA, but I did see what happened last night. And I do know what the pattern's been towards Caitlin Clark in terms of physical play, allowed cheap and dirty physical play towards her since she's come into the league. What you heard was a game last night between Phoenix, they are called the Mercury, and the Indiana Fever. You probably know them at this point because that's the team that Caitlin Clark plays for. I would bet you that people who did not previously pay attention to the WNBA, if they can name a team nickname before any others, it would be the Indiana Fever at this point, because the most famous player in the WNBA and the Golden Goose, Caitlin Clark, plays for the Indiana Fever. Well, in the third quarter last night, Caitlin Clark had to leave the game. They called it a back injury. But what had happened earlier in the game, in the second period, is that she drove the lane, stumbled, fell down with some contact, but not egregious contact. But what happened afterwards is what you heard, which is she was on the ground and Alyssa Thomas sort of collapsed on Caitlin Clark. And while she was on top of Caitlin Clark, she appeared to use her fist to punch or at least push with force into Caitlin Clark's neck. Then she got up and stepped over the top of Caitlin Clark. That came, by the way, after there was an egregious flagrant, which was similar to the Wemby play on Jalen Brunson, where somebody gets into her landing spot on a three-point shot and hopes that she lands and, blows out an ankle. And that was not called. The coach, her name is Stephanie. What's her name again? Sorry, I just lost
White.
it. Stephanie White. She went off in the postgame. Here's what she said.
I mean, the fist in the throat is crazy. It's crazy. It's dangerous. The landing spot, when you went to review it and she still comes down on top of another foot, like, I don't know. Because to me, that's like a do-over on a test. How do you screw it up again? You're coming in here aware of what happened 2 nights ago, and that still happens? Absolutely unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. And the reckless closeout that they actually reviewed, and the foot still comes down on top of the defender's foot that wasn't upgraded? Absolutely disrespectful. We have a generational talent and a WNBA superstar who had 2 cheap shots right there that weren't called. And I just say again, absolutely unacceptable.
Stephanie White, the Indiana Fever head coach. By the way, if you're wondering and you haven't been following it, Caitlin Clark is second in the WNBA in assists per game, just 0.2 of an assist behind, believe it or not, the woman who, put her fist into Caitlin Clark's neck last night, Alyssa Thomas. And she currently is 4th in the league in scoring. She's a really good player. Somebody else more expert would have to tell you where she ranks among WNBA players, but she's 4th in scoring, 2nd in assists. I will say this, that Aja Wilson, she's really good. Like, she's the one player in that league where it's like, I think she could play in the WCAC. Seriously. She's also big and strong. I cannot tell you in all of my years of watching sports that I ever remember a league that has tried harder than the WNBA to make less money rather than attempt to make more money. I mean, what's usually better for a business? More money or less money? The WNBA seems to think that less money is better. I just am blown away with the stupidity from a business standpoint of the way the league has conducted itself in regards to Caitlin Clark. By the way, I saw this because before the show, I was just pulling up Caitlin Clark recent stuff. The WNBA yesterday put a poster out celebrating 30 years of the WNBA. By the way, 28 of those years, or 27. Is this Caitlin Clark's third year in the league? Third year, right?
Yeah, third year.
So 27 of those years completely underwater, losing money hand over fist year after year. The only reason it stayed alive is the NBA continued to subsidize it year in and year out. I mean, they could have just let it go belly up years ago if they had wanted to, but they didn't. And then all of a sudden, Caitlin Clark arrives, and the league's got a new TV deal. Teams are flying private, and players are making, 5x what they were making before. 5x. So they put out this poster yesterday celebrating 30 years of the WNBA. And Caitlin Clark is not on the poster, but like 20 players are. It's beyond me what they are doing. I mean, I can't believe I'm commenting on a poster, but it's like every time you pay attention, you realize that I'm not going to give you the absolute reason for why they're trying to submarine their own business, but it's certainly rooted in jealousy. It's rooted in pettiness. I'm sure there are other reasons that they do not like her. And I don't know, maybe some of those reasons are legit. Can you imagine even Michael Jordan, let's say 3 or 4 years into his career, if the NBA had been really a problematic league in terms of business, that Jordan wouldn't have been on the poster? There are other players that have only been in the league, I'm told. I don't know who the players are. But I saw a lot of the follow-up. There are other players that have only been in the league for 4 or 5, years. It's not like it's the legends of the game poster. Apparently, Diana Taurasi's not on the poster either, so they screwed up there. Literally, she by herself. I mean, this is a generational talent. Her coach called her a generational talent. This is a player that came into the league, gave it the most visibility it's ever had. That led to much improved television ratings, much improved live audience size, crowds, attendance. That led to an unprecedented increase in a television deal, which led to, they get to fly private now like the NBA teams do. We're making 5x what we were making before in some cases. She is the single biggest reason that the WNBA does not have to be subsidized by the NBA anymore. And they try to beat the living S out of her every night. And the referees appear to be ignorant to this or supportive of it. I don't know that I've never seen a business in sports anyway actively try to make less money than more money. Never. It's insanity. I'm surprised, that the NBA, Big Brother hasn't had a sit down and said, look, we got to get some adults into the room here. Like, do you realize? Let me show you the books for the first 27 years of your little business here. It was underwater every single year for 27 years, and we had to subsidize it. We had to fund it. We had to keep it alive. And then we had this unbelievable event. This girl from Iowa who was captivating as a player at Iowa, where people were watching women's college basketball to levels they had never watched it before. She was playing to sold-out arenas every time she left Iowa City. And she's coming to our league. And she came to our league, and look what happened. ratings up. By the way, when Indiana's not playing and she's not playing, I was looking up some of these numbers. I mean, the ratings are basically half when she's not in the game, when her team's not playing. Look, I think there's a level of her, rising tide lifts all boats. And because she came in and the tide rose, that others got noticed for the first time in a real way, in a consumer-based way, in a way that could be monetized way, in a meaningful way. So, people learned, hey, Asia Wilson's really good, and this girl's really good, and this team's interesting, and this coach is interesting. Sure, I'm sure there was a lot that was interesting about that league, but nobody cared. Literally nobody cared, to the point where the NBA had to fund it for 27 years to keep it afloat. Why would you want to make less money than more money? And where are the frickin' adults to sit down with, I don't know enough about the construct of the league, the commissioner, every owner, every general manager, every coach, and every referee, to say competition's important. You got to earn your way, but it's different when there's one player that is mostly responsible for top-line revenue in our league. And our revenue was X, and now it's 10X or whatever the number is since she arrived. So let's not beat her up so badly that she decides that she wants to go do something else. Like maybe start her own league, which she probably could do. Incredible. I don't know the backstory leading into last night. I read that there was some beef from the game the other night. I do know that over and over again, for now, since she came into the league, that they have attacked her physically, and they've allowed it to go on. She missed games. She's missed games this year. It's not all been because of cheap shots and overly physical play. But this is not like other sports leagues, people. This is not, you got to earn it. Hey, I mean, let's see if she's tough enough, if she's good enough, the cream. No, she is the cream. She is the gold goose. She's the one that's making this thing work. It's not like that in the NFL. One player doesn't have that impact. It's not even like that in the NBA, which is a star-based league, but one star doesn't carry it. I mean, imagine when the NBA was at a crossroads, late 70s, last time our Bullets/Wizards were good. But I mean, the 78 and 79 NBA finals, some of those games were tape delayed. And then we get Magic and Bird into the league. And look, Magic and Bird were just, obviously exceptional. And I know Caitlin Clark is great too, but I don't know that Caitlin Clark's the best player in the league. I don't think she is, but I think she's among the top 10 players in the league, somewhere in that general area. Magic and Bird became pretty quickly the two best players in the league. But imagine if the league allowed the NBA's had star treatment for its stars forever. There's none of that in the WNBA. But imagine if they got treated the way she's been treated, to the point now, both of them, you'd have been messing with trouble with both of them had you, inspired them anymore. But that league was, teetering in 79, in 80. And they saved the league in that moment. Two college stars that had met in the national championship game in Salt Lake City in March of 1979 into the league, and they immediately proved that they belonged at a very high level. Imagine if the NBA said, "Yeah, no, we're teetering here. We're gonna let players beat the crap out of them and keep them down, and we'll have the officials call games in which they don't get any calls, and actually we tilt it against them." And I've never seen a league in sports literally try to earn less money than more money. And that's what the WNBA appears to be doing. Go back to that Olympics summer from 2 years ago. They don't put her on the team. What was it? Something like an estimated $75 million they thought was lost because her Olympic jersey would have generated at least that in revenue. I mean, whether that goes back to the WNBA or to her or even to the IOC and the Olympic. I mean, how do you not put her on that world stage? How do you not take advantage of that? Again, I'm not talking about the NFL. You don't have to do that with a rookie player that comes into the NFL, although those players get highlighted all the time. But you don't have to do that. The league makes money hand over fist. The NBA does. Major League Baseball does. The NHL does, I'm pretty sure. This league had to be subsidized for its first 27 years. It had to be kept afloat by the NBA. And one person shows up and changes the whole business dynamic of this entity. And they're trying to beat the crap out of her because they're jealous, they're petty, or whatever the other reasons are. Just can't believe it. I'm hoping that Christine Brennan writes some sort of column on what happened last night because she's always great on this stuff. She's written the book on Caitlin Clark, which was excellent. But, really, every time it seems like that's the only news you get this day about on the WNBA is how somebody cheap-shotted Caitlin Clark. And, a lot of people say, well, she whines and she complains about the officiating. So what? Who cares what she does? The public, the consumers love her. They're paying to see her. They're watching her. And everybody's benefiting from that. Who cares if she complains and bitches and whines to the officials? Who cares if she's a cheap shot artist? Somehow, I don't think she is. Who cares? She's the meal ticket. Protect it. Cultivate it. Support it. Lift it up. Make sure that she's on the front of everything you put out. Everything. She's the attraction. No one else is anywhere near what she is and has been. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. So Chicago Bears quarterback Caleb Williams, I think I remember reading about this at some point, maybe this time last year or during the season, but he attempted to trademark the word Iceman. By the way, am I missing this? Does anybody call him Iceman?
The Bears fans have started to try and get that rolling during the playoffs last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, people are divided on it. That's what I'll say.
Well, the U.S., patent and
Office?
trademark office is not divided on it. They have temporarily booted his attempt to trademark the word Iceman. Now, when I
wins
read
again.
No, that's what's interesting.
Oh, no.
I thought for sure it would be because the true Iceman, George Iceman Gervin,
one
of the greatest scorers in the history of the NBA, would have owned that mark. And by the way, he truly was the Iceman. I mean, that's how everybody knows when you talk about in sports. When you talk about the Iceman, you think of George Gervin. Now, apparently, UFC Hall of Famer Chuck Liddell also has attempted to mark Iceman as well. Neither George Gervin or Chuck Liddell have been successful in doing it. Instead, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office told Caleb Williams and his application for a mark on Iceman that it had too much similarity and a likelihood of confusion on a trademark filed in 1988 by Lacrosse Footwear for insulated boots. The U.S. Patent Trademark Office wrote in its refusal letter to Caleb Williams, these marks are identical in appearance, sound, and meaning. Additionally, because they are identical, these marks are likely to engender the same connotation and overall commercial impression when considered in connection with applicants' and registrants' respective goods and or services. Who knew that Lacrosse Footwear had Iceman marked? And that's why George Gervin hasn't been able to get it. If anybody could get it, it would be him. But they turned down Caleb Williams' application for Iceman. I don't. What? It's not even necessarily a nickname that fits, does it, for him? Like for Gervin, Iceman was because he was just so cool. He was just the coolest player of that era to watch. He literally could get 70, and it looked like he wasn't even trying. I mean, actually, I'm surprised that I didn't even come up with Darren Peterson's comp being George Gervin. I think somebody else did, actually. Peterson's much more of a, creator, and Gervin was definitely a two guard. I mean, he was a 6'8" shooting guard, and he could shoot and he could score. But he did it in just the most effortless way, in the most cool way. And by the way, was super clutch too. So he got that nickname early on, I think when he was in the ABA, and then it continued. I've never heard the reference to Caleb Williams as Iceman. I don't necessarily think his playing style fits with that nickname. He's like the ultimate, creator, like running around 50 yards backwards to try to make impossible throws, which he does. He's more of chaos as a quarterback. It works. I mean, he played really well at the end of last year. Came up awfully big in that playoff game against Green Bay. Came up with some big plays in the snow game loss to the Rams in overtime in the playoffs. So he's not going to get it marked. I would imagine, certainly from a goods and services and products he wants to sell, he was looking for a brand. Again, Bears fans may call him the Iceman. By the way, officially now, the NFL has announced the dates for the 2027 draft in Washington, D.C. April 29th, Thursday night, 2027 through Saturday, May 1st, 2027, the NFL draft presented by Bud Light will be in D.C. Let me just see if there are any good quotes in this story. If you didn't know where it was going to be, hosted in partnership with the Washington Commanders and Events DC, the free 3-day event will bring fans from around the world to the nation's capital for one of the most anticipated events in sports. The 2027 NFL Draft will take place across iconic locations throughout Washington, D.C., with the National Mall anchoring the Draft Theater in front of the Capitol and the NFL Draft experience spanning Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest between 3rd and 7th Streets. Okay. Additional event elements will be situated throughout the footprint surrounding the National Mall. I've seen the estimates, more than 1 million people, maybe as much as 1.3, 1.4 million expected over 3 days. It will be an unbelievable event for this city. And we're probably within 8 years of a potential Super Bowl in D.C. as well. I'm sure Super Bowls generate a lot of revenue, but this is a 3-day event with many more people being able to attend it. I think I've mentioned this before, but this is one of those, whomever came up with the idea in the league office, and once they came up with the idea and it was like considered, and then they did it for the first time and it worked in a major way, that person better have at the very least senior VP next to their job title. Because it's one of the great ideas the NFL's ever had. Moving the draft city to city, 3-day events, drawing hundreds of thousands and now potentially more than 1 million over 3 days. Incredible for the NFL, incredible for the city, incredible for everything. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm sure I'm going to be there, I would imagine, for some of it working. But you couldn't pay me as a fan to sit out there for 5 or 6 hours watching the draft. But there are millions of NFL fans that can't wait for these opportunities, and it should be a great backdrop. It should be incredible. It was just in Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah, and I feel like with these dates, they're trying to middle peak bloom. They're trying to get it in there right as the cherry blossoms pop. So we'll see.
No, I'm going to guess April 29th to May 1st.
It's a little late.
As 2 weeks minimum after the cherry blossoms. Don't you think?
It depends on
Look
the
to
year.
see when the cherry blossoms peaked this past April. It was later than usual because it was such a brutally cold winter. I do know that. But I don't think it ever stretches into
It's
late
about
April.
Yeah, they're shooting a month too far. It's end of March, early April, usually.
Yeah, usually. And I think this year it may have been like, maybe April 9th, April 10th, and that was considered late because the winter was so cold.
Right.
Yeah. Quotes. Let's just see if there's any quotes from anybody in the organization. Oh, yeah. Here's Mark Klaus, president of the organization. We're proud to partner with the NFL Events DC in the district to bring the 2027 NFL Draft to Washington, D.C. This is an historic moment for our organization, our fans, and the entire region. The draft has become one of the premier events in sports and entertainment, and with the momentum around football in this area, from the rapid growth of youth flag football to our return to the RFK site, there is no better time to bring it to the nation's capital. Football is woven into the fabric of this city, and we look forward to creating a memorable experience for all fans and celebrating the next generation of NFL players as they realize their dreams. Mayor Bowser, we're thrilled to welcome the 2027 NFL Draft to the sports capital. I don't know if we're the sports capital, but we are the nation's capital. We saw the enthusiasm from fans at this year's draft, and so we want people to start planning their trips to D.C. now. We have world-class hotels and restaurants. Spring is a beautiful time to be in D.C., and we're a city that loves to celebrate sports. So mark your calendars for April 29th. We'll see you in D.C. Pittsburgh set an all-time attendance of 805,000 fans over 3 days. But I have seen estimates of more than 1 million for D.C. Unbelievable for the city. Incredible event. I'm wondering, is it ultimately a better event for the city that's hosting it in terms of hotels, restaurants, etc., than hosting the Super Bowl? Because of just how many. Now, I know Super Bowl sites get a lot more people into the city than attend the game, but only 75 to 80,000 go to the game. We're going to have 300,000 plus every day, probably closer to 400,000 plus every day. And I also wonder what percentage of the people that attend these live drafts are from the area or from outside the area. It appears to me more times than not, the majority are from outside the area. I mean, it has to be 805. I mean, what's the population of Pittsburgh? I mean, 805,000 fans across 3 days, basically, 270, 275 per day. It has to be more than just Pittsburgh.
The city of Pittsburgh has approximately 308,000 residents, but when factoring the broader metropolitan area, the greater Pittsburgh area has 2.4 million.
It's 2.4 million. So that percentage of 2.4 million, they're not going to the draft. It's a lot of people coming in from out of town to attend this thing. And we'll see the same thing. Amazing. All right, done for the day. Chris is next.